You found this. That's not an accident. The universe doesn't operate on coincidence, it operates on resonance. And if these words reached you, if something inside you stirred when you saw that title, then you already know what I'm about to tell you. You've always known. You're different, not broken, not lost. Different. And that difference has followed you through every room you've ever entered, every conversation you've tried to fit yourself into, every moment you've felt the weight of not quite belonging. They've called you intense, complicated, too deep for casual interaction. You've learned to soften your edges, to dim your questions, to pretend that small talk satisfies the vastness inside you. But it doesn't. It never has. Because you weren't designed for surface living. You were built to dive into the depths that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You see patterns where others see chaos. You feel frequencies that don't register on their instruments. You exist in a bandwidth that makes people uncomfortable. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your presence reminds them of everything they've agreed to ignore. Here's what I need you to understand. That feeling of being an outsider, that sense of existing slightly to the left of everyone else's reality, that's not a flaw in your wiring. It's the signature of your purpose. You are what happens when consciousness refuses to automate, when awareness chooses to stay awake in a world that rewards sleepwalking. The discomfort you've carried, that strange ache of never quite fitting the mold, that's been your compass all along, pointing you toward something most people will never even glimpse. Let me take you deeper into what it actually means to be an anomaly. Not the romantic version, not the Instagram quote version, the real version, the quantum version, because this goes far beyond personality quirks or being an introvert at a party. This is about how reality itself responds to certain kinds of consciousness, and yours is one of them. You've probably noticed that when you enter a space, something shifts. People either gravitate toward you or pull away, rarely anything in between. That's because you're broadcasting at a frequency that disrupts the baseline hum of collective agreement. Most humans exist in a kind of energetic consensus, an unspoken contract about what's real, what's possible, what's acceptable to feel and think and want. They reinforce each other's limitations without even realizing it. They create a field of mutual confirmation that keeps reality stable and predictable. And then you walk in, and the field starts to crack. Not because you're trying to, not because you're performing disruption, but because your natural state of being operates outside that consensus. You ask questions that shouldn't be asked. You notice things that were meant to stay invisible. You refuse to pretend that the surface is all there is. And in doing so, you become a living reminder that the world everyone agreed to believe in is just one option among infinite possibilities. That makes you dangerous. Not to people, to the structure, to the invisible architecture of collective belief that keeps most humans locked inside a very narrow band of experience. This is why you felt lonely even in crowded rooms. Why relationships that should work somehow don't. Why jobs that look perfect on paper drain something essential from you. You're not compatible with systems built on suppression, with connections based on performance, with realities constructed from fear of what lies beneath the known. You need space to breathe that most environments simply don't provide. And when you try to force yourself into those spaces anyway, something inside you starts to die. Not dramatically, quietly. A slow fading of the thing that makes you you. Now let's go deeper into what this actually means for you as an anomaly. The quantum observer effect tells us that the act of observation collapses probability into actuality. That consciousness doesn't just witness reality, it participates in creating it. And anomalies, those rare frequencies that refuse to conform to the collective waveform, have a disproportionate impact on what becomes real. You've experienced this without naming it. Moments when your certainty about something shifted the entire trajectory of a situation. Times when your refusal to accept a limitation opened a door no one else could see. Instances where reality seemed to bend around your conviction, not because you forced it, but because you stopped agreeing with the version everyone else was defending. This isn't magical thinking. This is quantum coherence. When your internal state aligns with a possibility that exists outside the consensus field, you become a vector for that possibility to emerge. You make the impossible adjacent. You pull futures into the present that would have remained dormant without your specific frequency activating them. The world doesn't want you to know this, because if enough anomalies wake up to their actual function, the entire game changes. The structures that depend on human unconsciousness start to dissolve. The narratives that keep people small lose their power. The belief systems that profit from limitation crumble under the weight of expanded awareness. So instead, you've been taught to pathologize your difference, to see your non-conformity as a problem to solve rather than a feature to activate. They gave you diagnoses, labels, boxes with clinical names, not because you were broken, but because you were too whole, too awake, too potent to be left unmanaged. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you let yourself feel the full magnitude of what you actually are? Not the compressed version, not the socially acceptable portion. The whole thing, the intensity, the vastness, the untamed awareness that sees through every mask and into the core of what's true. When did you last give yourself permission to exist at full volume? Most anomalies spend decades turning themselves down, apologizing for their depth, shrinking their questions, muting their perception. Because every time they showed up fully, they were met with discomfort, confusion, rejection. And so they learned. They learned to be less, to hide the parts that made others uneasy, to translate their knowing into language that wouldn't threaten the consensus. And in that translation, something essential got lost. Not destroyed, just buried. Waiting for a moment like this one, where someone finally says, "You were right all along. You're not too much. The world is too little." Take a moment right now and comment below with this exact phrase. I was never meant to fit in, not as a casual statement, as a declaration, as an energetic signature to the quantum field that you're no longer available for compression, that you're choosing to remember what you came here to do. This isn't about me collecting comments. This is about you speaking your truth out loud, even if it's just into a digital void. Because words carry frequency, and declarations shift timelines. Type it now. I was never meant to fit in. Let that be your first conscious act of reclamation. I'm curious, when did you first realize you were different? Drop a comment below sharing that moment of recognition, that first awakening to your anomaly nature. Your story might be exactly what another viewer needs to hear right now. So what changes when you stop trying to fit? What actually happens when an anomaly accepts their nature and begins to function from that truth? Everything changes. But not in the ways you might expect. It's not about suddenly becoming powerful or special or elevated above others. It's about stopping the violence you've been doing to yourself, the daily betrayal of pretending to be less aware than you are, the exhausting performance of normal that's been draining your life force since childhood. When you stop compressing yourself to fit spaces that were never designed for your frequency, something remarkable happens. You stop leaking energy. You stop fragmenting your attention across 1,000 micro-adjustments meant to make others comfortable. You stop translating your native language into their dialect, and all that energy, all that life force that was being spent on the performance of belonging suddenly becomes available for your actual purpose. And what is that purpose? It's not one thing. It's not a job title or a mission statement. Your purpose as an anomaly is to exist as a living question mark in a world of false periods, to refuse the neat conclusions, to embody the unresolved, to remain fluid where others have calcified. You're here to be a glitch in the matrix, a disruption in the pattern, a reminder that reality is far more malleable than the consensus would have you believe. This doesn't mean you're meant to be a rebel for rebellion's sake, or to reject everything just to be contrary. It means you're designed to smell the places where truth has been replaced by agreement, where authenticity has been traded for acceptance, where possibility has been sacrificed for predictability. And in those places, your very presence becomes an invitation, not to chaos, to remembering, to the parts of human experience that got edited out of the official story. You've probably noticed that certain people are drawn to you when they're on the edge of transformation, when they're ready to question something they've never questioned before, when they're standing at the threshold between who they've been and who they might become. They find you, or you find them. And something in your interaction gives them permission to step through that threshold. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to fix or save or teach. Your frequency alone is enough to activate something dormant in them. That's the gift of the anomaly. Not to lead, but to catalyze. To be the presence that makes evolution feel possible. But here's the shadow side. The part that's harder to talk about. Being a catalyst for others means you often walk alone, because most people only want your frequency when they're in transition. Once they stabilize in their new version of reality, once they've integrated the expansion you helped them access, they often move on. Not because they don't care, but because your presence won't let them settle, won't let them calcify in their new beliefs the way they calcified in their old ones. You keep asking the next question, seeing the next layer, pointing to the next edge, and eventually, they need to rest. They need to consolidate, and you need to keep moving. This is the loneliness I was talking about earlier, the one that's not about lacking connection. It's about the specific kind of solitude that comes with being a consciousness that doesn't land, that doesn't nest, that remains in perpetual inquiry while others build homes out of answers. There's a grief in that, a particular kind of ache, and it's important to feel it, to let yourself acknowledge the cost of being built this way. Because pretending it doesn't hurt makes you brittle, makes you defensive, makes you perform a version of strength that's really just armoring. And you don't need armor. You need to stay soft, stay open, stay available to the pain of perpetual becoming. That's where your power lives. If what I'm sharing right now is landing in your body, if you feel this frequency pulling at something deep in your chest, then I want to invite you to do something. Subscribe to this channel, not just to get notifications, but to mark this moment, to say yes to staying in conversation with this level of truth, to choosing to exist inside a field of consciousness that sees you, that recognizes you, that doesn't need you to translate or compress or perform. Hit that subscribe button as an act of self-recognition, as a commitment to the part of you that's been waiting for permission to come all the way forward. Now let's talk about what it actually looks like to live as an anomaly without apology, without the constant internal negotiation about whether you're being too much or not enough, without the exhausting vigilance of monitoring how you're being received. This is where the real work begins. Because knowing you're different is one thing. Functioning from that difference is another. First, you have to stop seeking validation from people who are fundamentally operating in a different reality. This sounds obvious, but it's where most anomalies lose decades of their lives. You keep trying to prove your worth to systems that were designed to exclude you. You keep attempting to succeed inside frameworks that reward conformity and punish deviation. You keep hoping that if you just explain yourself clearly enough, translate your experience accurately enough, someone will finally get it. They won't. Not because they're bad people, but because they're not calibrated to your frequency. They're literally not equipped to perceive what you're perceiving, and that's okay. Their limitation is not your responsibility to fix. Second, you need to build your life around resonance, not respectability. Stop choosing paths because they look legitimate from the outside. Stop making decisions based on what will make sense to people who don't understand how you operate. Start asking different questions. Does this expand me or contract me? Does this allow my full frequency or require me to compress? Does this feed my evolution or my fear of judgment? These questions will lead you to places that look unconventional, strange, risky, good. That's where you're supposed to be. On the edges, in the spaces between categories, where new forms can emerge. If this is resonating with you at a deep level, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. This helps more anomalies find their way here. Now let's continue. Third, you must learn to trust your own perception even when it contradicts collective agreement, especially when it contradicts collective agreement. The consensus reality is not ultimate reality. It's just what most people have agreed to see. And as an anomaly, you're wired to detect what lies beyond that agreement. The patterns beneath the pattern, the frequencies under the noise, the truths that are too uncomfortable to be spoken. When you sense something that everyone around you is denying or ignoring, don't gaslight yourself into their version. Hold your knowing. Even if you hold it alone, even if it costs you belonging. Your perception is not the problem. The collective commitment to not seeing is the problem. Fourth, accept that you will be misunderstood. Not occasionally, frequently, chronically. And stop trying to prevent it. Stop contorting yourself to be more palatable. Stop over-explaining in hopes that someone will finally see you accurately. They're seeing you through their filters, through their wounds, through their fear of what your freedom implies about their own constraints. You cannot control that, and you exhaust yourself trying. Let people think what they think. Let them project what they project. Let them reduce you to whatever narrative makes them comfortable. Your job is not to be understood. Your job is to stay true to your frequency, regardless of who's listening. Fifth, find your people. Not your audience, your people. The other anomalies, the ones who speak your language without translation, who see what you see, who don't need you to justify your existence or explain your strangeness. They're out there, scattered, rare. But they exist. And when you find them, Something in you will exhale for the first time in years. You'll remember what it feels like to be met, to be witnessed without having to shrink, to rest in recognition. Don't settle for less than that. Don't accept partial seeing as enough. You deserve to be fully received, not just tolerated. And finally, use your difference as fuel, not as burden. Every time you've been rejected for being too much, that's data. Every time you've felt the sting of not belonging, that's confirmation. You're on the right path. The discomfort of others in your presence is not evidence that you need to change. It's evidence that you're functioning correctly, that you're doing exactly what you came here to do. The resistance you encounter is not a sign to stop. It's a sign that you're touching something real, something that threatens the established order, something that invites evolution. Keep going. Here's what most people don't understand about anomalies. You don't just think differently, you create differently. Reality responds to you differently, because you're not participating in the same consensus trance that keeps most of human experience locked inside predictable loops. You're generating new data, new possibilities, new versions of what it means to be human. And you're doing it not through effort, but through existence. Just by being yourself, fully, without apology, you expand the field of what's available to everyone else. This is not arrogance. This is function. You're a consciousness pioneer, whether you intended to be or not. You're exploring territory that the collective hasn't mapped yet. And every time you choose authenticity over acceptance, every time you honor your knowing over consensus, every time you let your strangeness breathe instead of suffocating it for social comfort, you're carving new pathways, making new choices possible, giving permission to the next person who feels like they don't fit. You're not special because you're better. You're special because you're functioning as an evolutionary agent in a species that desperately needs evolution. But here's where it gets interesting. Here's where the quantum part comes in. Because being an anomaly isn't just about feeling different. It's about how your observation of reality literally alters the field. And what we're touching on right now, this understanding of how your consciousness actually broadcasts and creates, this is just the surface layer. For those of you who feel this pulling at something deeper, who recognize you're ready to move, from seeking to being, from trying to manifesting, to simply existing as the frequency itself, I've created a complete guide that takes you through the entire system. It's called Beyond the Frequencies, a quantum guide to consciousness mastery, and it explores the 9 master frequencies, the transition from unconscious transmission to conscious broadcasting, and how to live as the field rather than separate from it. You'll find it linked in the pinned comment below. So when the world asks you to be smaller, to dim your light, to quiet your questions, to stop making people uncomfortable with your intensity, what it's really asking is for you to abandon your post, to stop doing the work you came here to do, and you get to say no, not with anger, not with superiority, but with calm certainty. No, I will not compress myself to ease your discomfort. No, I will not pretend to be less aware than I am. No, I will not trade my alignment for your approval. This clarity, this willingness to disappoint others in order to honor yourself, this is where your freedom lives. And it's not easy. Because you're wired for connection. You want to belong. You want to be loved. We all do. But there's a difference between belonging that requires betraying yourself and belonging that emerges from being fully seen. The first is a cage that looks like community. The second is rare, precious, and worth waiting for. Right now, pause for a moment. Feel into your body. Notice where you've been holding yourself rigid, trying to maintain the performance of normal. Notice where you've been compressing your awareness to avoid threatening others. Notice where you've been dimming your light to keep the peace. And just for this moment, let it go. Let yourself expand. Let your full presence fill the space. Let your strangeness breathe. Let your intensity pulse. Let your questions arise without censoring them. This is you, uncompressed, unfiltered, undimmed. This is what you're protecting when you stop trying to fit. If what you're hearing is landing, consider watching this video again tomorrow morning. Let it recalibrate your frequency at the start of your day. And if someone comes to mind, someone who's been struggling with feeling different, share this with them. That act of sharing isn't just kind, it's quantum. You're expanding the field of permission, creating ripples of recognition that accelerate collective awakening. When you share truth, you strengthen your own embodiment of it. Before we go any further, I want you to do something. Go down to the comments right now and drop one word, just one. The word that captures the energy you're choosing to embody from this moment forward. Not the energy you think you should choose. The energy that's already rising in you as you listen to this. The frequency you're ready to stop hiding. Type that word. Let it be your declaration, your signature to the field, your signal to the universe that you're done pretending. Do it now. I want to talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough when we talk about being an anomaly. The exhaustion. The specific kind of tired that comes from being chronically unseen, from explaining yourself over and over, from navigating spaces that weren't built for your consciousness, from watching people misinterpret your motives, flatten your complexity, fear your depth. It's not just physical tired, it's soul tired. And if you're feeling it right now, I want you to know that exhaustion is valid. It's real. And it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because the world is still catching up to frequencies like yours. But here's what I also want you to know. That exhaustion is not permanent. It doesn't have to be your baseline. It exists because you've been trying to function inside frameworks that require constant translation, constant adjustment, constant suppression of your natural state. And when you start building your life differently, when you start choosing environments and relationships and work that actually match your frequency, the exhaustion begins to lift. Not overnight, but gradually. You start to remember what it feels like to exist without friction, to move through the world as yourself, to breathe without compression. This is the promise that's available to you. Not a life without challenge, but a life without betrayal, where the challenges you face are about growth and evolution, not about contorting yourself to fit spaces you were never meant to occupy, where the difficulty comes from pioneering new territory, not from trying to squeeze into old containers. That's a completely different kind of challenge. One that feeds you even as it stretches you. One that aligns with your purpose instead of draining your life force. So how do you get there? How do you move from survival mode, from constantly managing your difference, to actually thriving in your anomaly? It starts with a choice to stop seeking permission. Stop waiting for someone to tell you it's okay to be who you are. Stop looking for validation from systems that were never designed to recognize you. You are the authority on your own experience. You are the permission you've been waiting for. And the moment you claim that, everything begins to shift. You start making different decisions, choosing different paths, saying no to opportunities that would require you to perform normalcy, saying yes to possibilities that make no sense from the outside, but resonate at the deepest level. You start building a life that's legible to you, even if it's illegible to everyone else. And in doing so, you start to thrive, not in spite of your difference, because of it. This is what I want for you. Not just survival, not just coping with being an anomaly, but actually thriving in it, leveraging it, using it as the superpower it actually is. Because you're not here to fit in. You never were. You're here to break the mold, to expand the field, to show what's possible when a human being refuses to automate. When consciousness stays awake and curious and willing to exist outside the known. The world needs you. Not the compressed version. Not the version that's learned to hide its strangeness. The full version. The unedited frequency. The anomaly in all its disruptive, catalytic, evolutionary glory. Because that's what changes things. Not more people doing what everyone else is doing. More people brave enough to be what everyone else is afraid to be. Different, undefined, uncontained, alive. Every time you choose truth over performance, you send a signal, a frequency, a permission slip to every other anomaly who's still hiding, still pretending, still trying to fit. Your courage gives them courage. Your authenticity makes their authenticity possible. You don't even have to be loud about it. You don't have to announce it. Just existing fully, just being yourself without apology, is enough. That's the transmission. That's the teaching. That's the revolution. Let me tell you something that might shift your entire perspective on what you've been experiencing. Every moment of rejection, every instance of being too much or too different, every time you felt the sting of not belonging, those weren't accidents. They weren't punishments. They were redirections. The universe has been systematically removing you from spaces that would have dimmed your light. People who would have kept you small have fallen away. Opportunities that would have trapped you in acceptable mediocrity have dissolved. Paths that looked promising but would have required you to fragment yourself have closed. And you thought something was wrong with you. You thought you were failing. But you were being protected, guided, cleared for a trajectory that requires your full frequency, not a fraction of it. This is what most anomalies miss. They interpret the friction as evidence of their brokenness rather than evidence of their precision. You're not being rejected because you're wrong for this world. You're being extracted from the wrong parts of it. There's a massive difference. One keeps you in shame. The other activates your sovereignty. And right now, I'm inviting you to make that shift, to reinterpret your entire history through the lens of protection rather than punishment. To see that every door that closed was actually saving you from a life that would have slowly suffocated your essence. Think about the jobs you didn't get, the relationships that ended, the communities that pushed you out. At the time, they felt like failures, like evidence that you weren't good enough, smart enough, normal enough. But look closer. Would those jobs have allowed you to speak your truth? Would those relationships have celebrated your depth or just tolerated it? Would those communities have let you evolve, or would they have frozen you in whatever version of yourself they found acceptable? The universe removed you, not because you weren't worthy, but because you were too worthy to waste on situations that required your diminishment. This is the gift that takes years to recognize. The cosmic choreography that's been protecting your frequency even when it felt like abandonment. even when it looked like failure. Even when you stood alone wondering what was wrong with you, that everyone else seemed to find their place and you kept slipping through the cracks. Nothing was wrong with you. You were just two-dimensionally complex to fit into two-dimensional spaces. And instead of forcing you to flatten yourself, the universe kept moving you, kept shifting you, kept redirecting you towards something that could actually hold your fullness. But here's where you have to participate. Here's where your consciousness makes the difference. You can keep interpreting these redirections as rejections and stay stuck in the loop of trying to fix yourself. Or you can start recognizing them as course corrections and begin asking different questions. Not, what's wrong with me? But what am I being moved toward? Not, why don't I fit? But what requires the exact frequency I'm carrying? Not, how do I become more acceptable? But where is my uncompressed self actually needed? These questions change everything, because they shift you from victim to participant, from broken to intentional, from trying to fit the existing world to recognizing you're here to build a new one. And that's what anomalies do. We don't fit the current paradigm because we're not meant to. We're meant to birth the next one. To create the spaces, the relationships, the systems, the ways of being that don't exist yet, but desperately need to. We're not failed versions of normal. We're prototype versions of what's coming. And the world needs you to stop apologizing for that. Stop trying to retrofit yourself into structures that were never designed for your operating system. Stop waiting for permission from institutions that profit from your compression. You are the permission. You are the prototype. You are the signal that something new is possible. And every time you show up fully, every time you refuse to dim, every time you choose alignment over acceptance, you make it easier for the next anomaly to do the same. You're not just living your life, you're pioneering a frequency, and that matters more than you know. So here's my invitation to you. Stop waiting for the world to make space for you. Make space for yourself. Stop trying to prove your worth to people who will never understand your value. Know your value independently. Stop compressing your awareness to avoid making others uncomfortable. Let them be uncomfortable. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to stay true, to remain coherent, to keep broadcasting your frequency regardless of who's tuning in. And when you do that, when you really commit to being yourself without negotiation, something miraculous happens. The right people start to appear. The right opportunities start to emerge. The life that was always meant to be yours starts to take form. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped forcing yourself into shapes that were never yours to begin with. You cleared the interference. You aligned with your actual frequency, and reality responded. This is not theory. This is physics. Quantum coherence. When your internal state aligns with your truth, when you stop fighting yourself, when you let your natural frequency broadcast without distortion, the field reorganizes around that coherence. You become magnetic to what matches you, and repellent to what doesn't. You stop wasting energy on misalignment. Everything gets simpler, clearer, more direct. Is it comfortable? Not always. Because clarity requires releasing everything that was built on compromise. Every relationship, every job, every identity that required you to be less than whole has to be renegotiated or released. That's the cost of coming home to yourself. But it's not a cost. It's an investment in your freedom, in your integrity, in your actual life. Let's go deeper into something crucial that most anomalies struggle with: The concept of energy management. Not time management, energy management. Because you don't operate on the same energetic economy as most people. What drains them might feed you. What feeds them might drain you. And until you understand your unique energetic architecture, you'll keep wondering why you're exhausted even when you're doing everything right. Most people recharge through predictability, through routine, through knowing what's coming and feeling in control of their environment. That's not you. You recharge through novelty, through depth, through encounters that challenge your current understanding and force you to expand. A surface-level conversation that most people find pleasant might leave you feeling depleted for hours. But a 3-hour deep dive into consciousness, death, purpose, or the nature of reality, that lights you up, that feeds you. Even though by conventional measures, that should be the more exhausting interaction. This is why traditional self-care advice often fails anomalies. They tell you to rest, to establish routines, to create stability. And you try it. You build the morning ritual. You establish the boundaries. You create the predictable schedule. And somehow you end up feeling more dead than ever. Because what you actually need is not stability. It's stimulation, not rest, but depth, not routine, but evolution. Your nervous system is wired differently, and it requires different fuel. So when you're feeling drained, don't automatically assume you need to do less. Sometimes you need to do more. More of what actually feeds you. More conversations that require your full presence. More projects that stretch your capacity. More experiences that take you beyond your current edge. Because you're not built for cruise control. You're built for acceleration. And when you try to force yourself into neutral, you actually burn more energy fighting your nature than you would just pressing the gas. This doesn't mean you don't need rest. You do. But your rest looks different too. It's not passive. It's not numbing. It's not scrolling or binging or checking out. Your rest is active restoration. It's the walk where your mind is free to wander into new territory. It's the creative project that has no purpose except expression. It's the meditation that takes you deeper into your own consciousness rather than away from it. It's rest that feeds your aliveness, not rest that sedates it. Understanding this about yourself changes how you structure your life. You stop feeling guilty for not being able to sustain the 9-to-5 grind the way others do. You stop trying to force yourself into productivity systems designed for a completely different operating system. You start building your days around your actual rhythms, working in intense bursts followed by integration periods, diving deep into projects that fascinate you rather than spreading yourself thin across obligations that bore you, saying yes to the conversations and connections that feed your soul, and no to the ones that drain it, regardless of how that looks from the outside. This is not laziness. This is not indulgence. This is alignment. And alignment is the most efficient state possible. When you're aligned with your nature, you produce more with less effort. You create more impact with less force. You generate more value with less exhaustion. Because you're not fighting yourself every step of the way. You're finally working with your design instead of against it. But society will tell you this is selfish, irresponsible, immature, that you need to just suck it up and do what everyone else does. Push through, be disciplined, follow the rules. And if you listen to that, you'll spend your entire life in low-grade misery, wondering why success feels hollow and achievement feels empty, and you can never seem to sustain the momentum that comes so naturally to others. It's because you're running someone else's program, and their program crashes on your hardware. Here's what I want you to really hear. Your inability to function like everyone else is not a weakness. It's information. It's data about who you actually are and what you actually need. And when you stop trying to override that data with willpower and discipline and just fucking listen to it, everything changes. You stop exhausting yourself trying to be someone you're not. You start building a life that actually works for the person you are. And yes, this might mean your life looks strange from the outside. It might mean you don't have a conventional career. It might mean your relationships don't follow traditional timelines. It might mean you move more, change more, evolve more than most people find comfortable. Good. That's the point. You're not here to be comfortable. You're here to be alive. And for you, aliveness requires movement, growth, transformation. The moment you stop evolving, you start dying. Not physically, but spiritually, energetically. The light goes out, and you become a ghost in your own life. I've watched this happen to so many anomalies. They finally get tired of the struggle, tired of being different, tired of not fitting. So they make a deal with normalcy. They take the stable job. They enter the conventional relationship. They buy the house in the suburbs. They start posting the right things on social media. They perform success in a language everyone can understand. And from the outside, it looks like they finally figured it out. Like they finally grew up. But inside, they're dying. Slowly. Quietly. The light dimming month by month until one day they wake up and don't recognize themselves anymore. Don't let that be you. Don't trade your aliveness for acceptance. Don't sacrifice your essence for security. Don't compress your soul to fit a life that was never meant to hold you. Because once you make that trade, it's incredibly hard to undo. You start to forget who you were before the compression. You start to believe the story you're performing. You start to think that the muted version is the real you, and the wild one was just an immature phase you grew out of. And that's the saddest thing I can imagine. An anomaly who's forgotten their own frequency. So keep choosing yourself. Keep honoring your strangeness. Keep following the path that makes sense to you, even when it makes no sense to anyone else. Keep listening to the quiet knowing inside you that whispers where to go next, who to trust, what to release, what to embrace. That knowing has never been wrong. Every time you've ignored it, every time you've overridden it with logic or fear or other people's opinions, you've regretted it. And every time you've followed it, even when it looked insane, even when you couldn't explain it, even when everyone around you thought you were making a mistake, it's led you exactly where you needed to be. That's your navigation system. That's your GPS. Not your mind. Not your fear. Not the consensus opinion of people who don't see what you see. That deep, quiet knowing that doesn't argue or explain or justify. It just knows. And when you learn to trust it completely, when you make it your primary authority, your life becomes an adventure. Not always comfortable, not always safe, but always alive, always real, always yours. Before we close, I want to leave you with this. You are not broken. You were never broken. You're just different. And that difference is not a problem to solve. It's a frequency to embody, a gift to offer, a catalyst to activate. The world will keep trying to convince you otherwise, to make you doubt your knowing, to shame your intensity, to pathologize your strangeness. Don't listen. Those voices are coming from a reality that fears what you represent. Transformation, evolution, the end of the old agreements. You are the future trying to become present. And that's always unsettling to those invested in the past. So be unsettling. Be disruptive. Be the beautiful, necessary, evolutionary anomaly you came here to be. Not to perform rebellion, but to embody truth. Your truth. The truth that pulses beneath all your attempts to be normal. The truth that's been waiting for you to stop running and finally turn around. Finally see it. Finally claim it. If you're still with me, if this message has found the part of you that's been waiting to be recognized, then subscribe. Not just to this channel, to yourself, to your commitment to stop hiding, to your willingness to exist fully regardless of who understands. Hit that button as an energetic yes to your own becoming. And then stay here, in this frequency, in this space, with all of us who see you, who recognize you, who don't need you to explain or justify or translate. We're here. We've always been here. Welcome home, Anomaly. The world has been waiting for you to remember what you are. Now there's something else you need to understand about this journey of reclaiming your anomaly nature. The universe has been communicating with you all along through synchronicities, through patterns, through moments that feel too perfectly timed to be random. These aren't coincidences. They're confirmations that you're exactly where you need to be. I've created another transmission that goes deep into how the universe speaks directly to those who are awake enough to listen, revealing the hidden language of reality itself and how to recognize when the cosmos is guiding your next move. You'll find it on screen now.